Hello friends, I am Dr. JC Sharma. I am cardiologist at Pacific Medical College and Hospital, Udaipur. You people are appearing in NEET PG just after 10 days and you will need to review almost all the medicine before appearing in the exam. I thought it right to give you a overview of and a rapid view of cardiology, which is my subject. My intention is to cover almost all the important topics in cardiology before you people appear in the examination. Best of luck. Hi friends, I am Dr. JC Sharma. I am cardiologist at Pacific Medical College and Hospital, Udaipur. I know you people are very busy right now in preparing for NEET exam, and what I think is that if you have a rapid review of cardiovascular system, it will be worthwhile and you will be able to answer many questions. I have prepared in such a way that all the important topics will be covered in my narrations. Today we have taken a very important subject which you come across in emergency room day and night, and that is acute myocardial infarction. No day will pass in your life when you will not be asked to see an ECG of chest pain. So you have to diagnose this. ECG, as you know, was invented in 1803. So more than 100 years, 1903 I am sorry, more than 100 years, this is still very logical test and very informative test. And I should say that the acute myocardial infarction can only be diagnosed with ECG reading. Heart is a pumping station. It pumps the blood 70 times per minute and more than 1 lakh times per day. So for this horrendous task, it has to get oxygen and glucose. It is being supplied by 3 coronary arteries. 2 are on the left side. One main artery arises from the left coronary sinus and one from right coronary sinus. There may be variations because there are always variations in everything in human body, including our faces. In spite of the population of around 7 billion on this earth, all the faces are different. It's so surprising. So coronaries are also little bit different from one to another person. So these coronary arteries, they take origin from left cusp, and cusp work as a cup, I should say, because the coronary fillings are there in the diastolic period of cardiac cycle. These are the coronary arteries. Left, you can see, arises from the left sinus and it goes straight as a left anterior descending artery, which is the most important artery. It gives a most important branch, or it bifurcates into a left circumflex. It wraps around in the left AV groove to the posterior side of the heart. The LAD goes up to the apex, may wrap around the apex, my dear. It is also very important, and it gives so important branches. All the septals and which supplies the anterior septum, and the diagonal branches which supplies the lateral portion of the heart. So the left main bifurcates into 2 branches, left anterior descending and left circumflex artery, anterior descending in the interventricular groove. Now we come to right coronary artery. Right coronary sinus, it descends down into right interventricular groove. This is atrium, this is ventricle. AV groove, it descends down, and the important branch first, it gives a acute marginal branch which supplies the RV, right ventricle. It has to be kept in mind. We tend to forget many branches of right coronary artery other than the PDA. But PDA is an important branch, and whichever vessel out of left circumflex or right coronary artery is a dominant vessel. In 85% cases, right coronary artery is dominant in the sense that it gives PDA, which supplies the posterior septum. In any case, left anterior descending is the most vital artery, but the dominant vessel we consider as an artery supplying the diaphragmatic portion, or I should say crux. Acute myocardial infarction is a leading cause of death all over the world and in our country also. In India, by all conservative estimates, at least 1 million cases per year, that is for sure, and many more, but they go unnoticed or unreported, I should say. Strangely, we don't have a registry where acute myocardial cases can be informed. Mortality is somewhat less, I should not call less, but somewhat less than before. Because of what? Coronary care units, a good care in intensive unit, fibrinolytic therapy, mechanical reperfusion, which is a boon, I should say, as far as the myocardial infarction is concerned, and long usage of statins. These are some good reasons to improve the mortality in cases of acute myocardial infarction. Mechanism. The most common mechanism of myocardial infarction is a rupture of the fibrous cap. This thin cap, when it ruptures, the coronary atheroma below it is exposed to the circulating platelets and the other formed cells, which will form a platelet aggregation, and these cells, they form a thrombus there, and this may cause a occlusive thrombus. The vessel closure is occlusive. Occlusive thrombus in any of the 3 epicardial arteries produce myocardial infarction. Means there is no blood supply to that territory which is being supplied by that epicardial artery. And I remind you that the left anterior descending, left circumflex artery and right coronary artery, which gives PDA in 85% of the cases. The other reasons, other pathophysiology which may lead to myocardial infarction is a coronary erosion of the plaque also, and rupture, fissuring. All these causes expose the subendothelium to circulating cells which produce which forms a thrombus. Recognition of ST elevation myocardial infarction is most important because this is a real emergency and it requires urgent revascularization. What is the clinical classification? It's not only the erosion which I have told you, it's not only the platelet aggregation, and this is only one form of myocardial infarction, which is although very common and most common, but there are other types also in the modern era. We will go one by one. So MI related to plaque rupture is type 1. Erosion, fissuring, dissection. Type 2 is ischemia resulting from increased oxygen demand, LV hypertrophy in aortic stenosis, and decreased supply. So this is a demand ischemia. which may be there in cases of anemia, in cases of hypertrophies. Number 3 is something a little funny, I should say, but they have classified, the ACC/AHA has classified this into a type 3 MI, where there is a sudden cardiac death. Symptoms of ischemia were there in these cases, and new ST elevation or LBB, which denotes myocardial infarction, were there, but they are lacking in biomarkers. Type 4 related with coronary interventions, that is percutaneous intervention, PCI. 4A. 4B is the MI, which is usually massive, is stent thrombosis. Very important. This is 4B. There should be a angiographic evidence of thrombus formation on the stent. In the same way, biomarker elevation is almost 5 times. Type 5 associated with bypass surgery. There is a lot of tissue handling, that is myocardial handling, during the bypass surgery, and if there is a myocardial infarction which is periprocedural, is type 5. So we go and talk about the most common form of myocardial infarction, that is plaque erosion. So what happens to the patient, how the patient presents in ER, in OPD or first medical contact? They talk about severe crushing substernal chest pain, the hallmark constricting type. This sensation is associated with a sense of doom. This kind of pain, he says, the patient says, never occurred before in their lives. So that is the pain, which is a pain of myocardial infarction, although there may be other things also, which we will talk later on. This pain may radiate to left arm, maybe both the shoulders, both arms, jaw, back, epigastrium. And very funny side of the infarction is they produce as GI symptoms. And they talk about the indigestion and acidity only. But in fact, they are suffering from the myocardial infarction. You take the ECG, they come late obviously, because they mistake their myocardial infarction as gastric pain. So any patient who was suffering from exertional angina or unstable angina for that matter, and if their pain lasts more than say 30 minutes, not relieved by anything, rest, or by GTN, is a myocardial infarction, and take a ECG within 10 minutes of their reaching into the emergency room. So ER management of these patients and ER suspicion of these patients or a first medical contact of these patients is so important as this. Peak intensity of myocardial infarction separates it from the aortic dissection and pulmonary embolism. To other disease than myocardial infarction. What are these? Aortic dissection and pulmonary embolism. Symptoms may be atypical at times. Which are the situations and settings where the symptoms may be atypical? Means clear-cut pain may not be there in women, elderly people, people with diabetes mellitus. And some important aspect here which I will remind 2-3 times. Pain sudden, radiates to back and tearing knife-like is a aortic dissection. Always keep this in mind. So what are the associated symptoms along with the chest pain, which is the presenting symptom? There may be diaphoresis, patient may be dyspneic, there is a fatigue, intense fatigue, instantaneously, lightheadedness, palpitation, and something very different here is acute confusional syndrome type, and it is a myocardial infarction. GI symptoms, very common, with inferior MI, although they may be associated with inferior MI. We will talk about these also later on. Physical examination doesn't add much as far as the diagnosis is concerned. As I have told you, the ECG has stood the test of the time for more than 100 years. And this test by Einthorn, in fact Einthorn thought that there is not only the pumping action, but there is something, electricity is produced by the contraction of the myocardium, and he metered it in a galvanometer. So this particular invention has withstood the test of the time, and still it is very relevant today. So the physical examination doesn't add much, but if there is a heart failure, we come to know. If there are other reasons which cause the chest pain, we come to know. If there are mechanical cardiac auscultation is important, because later on they may develop a MR or a VSD. We will talk about them in detail as mechanical complications. So there may be comorbid ischemia along with aortic dissection. If dissection goes down and take the dissection, if the dissection is involves the coronary artery also. Right coronary artery is many times involved with the aortic dissection type 1, that is ascending aorta dissection. Stress cardiomyopathy, it may be there. In the systemic arterial embolism, it may be there. In hypertensive crisis also. In cocaine use, we will talk a little more about it. ST elevation but no ischemia. What are these situations? Early repolarization is one. We call it benign early repolarization in a young man. The concavity of the ST elevation and T is hyperacute type. This is early repolarization. I will show you some ECGs later on. LV hypertrophy will produce V1, V2 ST elevation, but not to be confused with myocardial infarction. LBB, again V1, V2 ST elevation, and you may be confused if it is a myocardial infarction. Hyperkalemia at some stage may lead to a misunderstanding of myocardial ischemia. Brugada syndrome, V1, V2, V3 ST elevation. Very peculiar ST elevation, we will show you later on in the discussion that how the Brugada looks like. So there is a chest pain but no ischemia. What are these situations? Aortic dissection, we are talking again and again. Stress cardiomyopathy is a Takotsubo, we will talk a little more. In the same way, myopericarditis, pleuritis, important. Pulmonary embolism, severe chest pain but no ischemia. Costochondritis, teat syndrome, this is an important one. The tenderness, localized tenderness can be elicited. GI disorders, esophagus rupture and the reflux esophagitis, we will talk a little more. Infarction mimics. Which are the conditions which can mimic a myocardial infarction? ECG wise, presentation wise. Pericarditis, as I was talking about it. This pain is somewhat different than myocardial infarction. It is more when the patient is supine. He is lying on the bed, pain is much more. It improves with sitting and if he leans forward. So you will observe a patient sitting and leaning forward, pericarditis patients. But mind you, don't forget that the pericarditis can complicate at acute MI also on second, third day or after 3-4 weeks. The hallmark of ECG hallmark, I should say, of pericarditis is a ST segment elevation with a concavity upwards. We will show you the classical ECGs later on. And there may be a PR segment depression, very clearly seen. Reciprocal ST segment depression are not seen except in only one lead, or two lead I should say, AVR or V1. Reciprocal changes are absent in pericarditis. Early T wave inversion does not occur in acute pericarditis as in myocardial infarction. Echo is diagnostic and you don't see any regional valve motion abnormality. Regional valve motion abnormality in cases of pericarditis and slight pericardial effusion you may notice. So that is very clearly that is a pericarditis. In the same way, myocarditis, it is very similar to MI. The presentation is very similar, the ST elevation is very similar, and there may be a segmental LV dysfunction on echo also. So the careful history if you take in cases of myocarditis, which is usually viral, is an insidious onset, not that acute, which is vascular. Associated viral syndrome will be there in these cases. If you do the coronary arteries, which are to be done to exclude the myocardial infarction, the vascular event is a normal coronary arteries. Cardiac MRI is something with gadolinium is very important because there is a patchy distribution like a myocardial infarction, but only epicardium and mid myocardium are involved. There is sparing of endocardium in CMR. Stress cardiomyopathy. It is relatively a phenomenon which have been described say only for 10-15 years only. This happens in a middle-aged woman and as the name suggests, stress cardiomyopathy. The lady in the intense psychological stress suffer from Takotsubo. Middle-aged females, emotional or physical stress and ECG changes, some mild troponin elevation also. But the ECG changes in the initial stages are indistinguishable from the myocardial infarction. The only way of excluding the Takotsubo is coronary angiography. Normal coronary arteries. So apical ballooning is the phenomenon with sparing of the basal and mid-ventricular segments. These are the important findings, can be very easily seen. And why the Takotsubo? We will show you the LV angiogram later on, and you will find it just similar to a octopus pod which the Japanese use to catch the octopus. Coronary arteries of course are normal. It returns to normal, all the changes return to normal much more faster than myocardial infarction, say in only 24 hours. But the bad thing about Takotsubo is it may recur if the stressful situation recur. Acute aortic dissection, lethal, and again the pain may be indistinguishable, but there are some features which distinguish the acute aortic dissection pain. Tearing type, knife like, radiates into back, interscapular region. This is one feature of aortic dissection. Chest pain with a coronary involvement may be there, as we were talking earlier. The carotid involvement may be there. Carotid involvement may lead to neurological signs. This is aortic dissection. Why it should be thoroughly investigated and ruled out is because fibrinolysis, anticoagulants and antiplatelets are absolutely contraindicated. in cases of aortic dissection. A disaster may happen if you give these three types of drugs. A proximal extension into the coronary arteries, it may also lead to acute MI along with aortic dissection. As I told you before, right coronary is the most common artery. We have seen many times being involved. In X-ray, chest X-ray, mediastinal widening may be found out in the bedside chest. Echo, dissection flash in the ascending aorta may be seen, and these days we may utilize the transesophageal echocardiography to rule out a flap in ascending aorta, because the patient may be so serious that he can't be moved to a CT scan room. If CT scan without contrast also and with contrast, it is diagnostic of aortic dissection. So as I told you, transesophageal and CT scan are important procedures to rule out the acute aortic dissection. Pulmonary embolism, another lethal thing, another dangerous thing which can lead to death and should be seen very early, because the management differs a lot, are signs and symptoms. Shortness of breath. There is a pleuritic chest pain, but there is no pulmonary edema. This is pulmonary embolism due to right ventricular dysfunction. In echo, if you see normal LV systolic function, and you see a RV dilatation and RV dysfunction, which is the hallmark of pulmonary embolism. Massive or submassive RV dysfunction you will find out. CT pulmonary angiography is diagnostic and confirmatory test rather than the real-time angiography. So pulmonary embolism can be ruled out by echocardiography and by CT pulmonary angiography if required. Esophageal disorders, reflux disease, very common. The pain may look like a cardiac pain, a coronary pain, but it is much more when he lies down. When the patient lies down, it is much more. Esophageal motility disorders are there, spasm. And one funny thing, that the GTN also relieves the pain of esophageal spasm, but it takes a little longer than the coronary pain. I mean the angina pain. Esophageal hyperalgesia is also one condition which may mimic a angina pain, and this pain may coexist with coronary artery, don't forget. Suggestive symptoms more postprandial, relief with antacid, and lack of radiation in the back or arm or this thing, then you must label this, or you may think of a real esophageal disorder which can lead to a frontal chest pain. Acute cholecystitis is another one which may coexist with coronary arteries in a middle-aged woman. Always suspect if there is a tenderness in the right hypochondrium and epigastrium also. But rarely, as I told you, they can too exist. Non-specific findings may be there, but inferior wall shows a ST elevation as far as cholecystitis is concerned. There will be fever, their TLC may be raised, and confirmation imaging is of course USG. A USG will diagnose a patient of cholecystitis. Brugada syndrome. ST elevation, one may be confused with myocardial infarction. That cooing type of ST elevation occurs in V1, V2, V3. But good thing is that the patient doesn't present as a chest pain. They present as ventricular fibrillation and sudden cardiac death. Do not present chest with the chest pain. Pseudo right bundle branch block, we will show you in the ECG later on in this narration. Mechanism of sudden cardiac death is no intracoronary thrombus but because of the sodium channel problem, there may be a asystole, ventricular fibrillation and asystole. So this is the ECG mimic of myocardial infarction. We will talk a little more about this when we will come to sudden cardiac arrest and sudden cardiac deaths. Laboratory examination, troponin. Troponin is one thing. High sensitive troponin may be suggestive, but always ST elevation is very suggestive and hallmark of myocardial infarction. Don't wait for the TROP-Ts and other tests to come, and you have to think about the reperfusion. And troponin elevation may also occur in cardiac failure, aortic dissections, hypertrophic cardiomyopathies, pulmonary embolisms, neurological disorders also, and cardiac confusion, direct injury and drug toxicities. This can lead to troponins raise in the blood. So everything depends upon the ECG and symptomatology. But high sensitive cardiotroponin will come as a biomarker, important biomarker in myocardial infarction. We can skip this. Second reading, come back. Second reading after 1 or 3 hours, and if there is a increase in the troponin, this can also be very diagnostic. But by that time, we really diagnose the myocardial infarction in ER. In the same way, there are other biomarkers which are of I call them historical value, because now we don't depend upon the CPK and CPK-MBs. They come late, number one, 4 to 6 hours at least. There is no appreciable rise, and these are, I should say, not very diagnostic, because even rhabdomyolysis and they can raise this. But there may be a early rise of CPK-MB if there is a reperfusion of the coronary artery mechanically or thrombolysis. So this is the chart which enzyme rises when, and you can see that the troponin rises within hours and lasts even up to 9 to 10 days. ECG. The most important thing. What are the criteria? In limb leads, in the hexagonal leads, 1 millimeter or more in 2 or more leads. If it is pericardial, if these are precordial leads, then there is a criteria of 2.5 millimeter and 1.5 millimeter in women. ST elevation may be accompanied by ST depression. These are reciprocal changes in the contralateral leads. But it requires accurate diagnosis and early diagnosis. So 1 millimeter and 2 millimeter ST elevations in contiguous leads is a myocardial infarction. This photograph I want to show you. Keep them in mind, that these are the various forms of ST elevations which you may encounter in a patient of pain chest, and these are all suggestive of myocardial infarction. The first one, see the subtle elevation. This second one, the check mark type, cuving. The concave type also may occur, but not the pericardial type. This kind of very acute number, on number 3, we will have to develop a third eye for this and keep the ST elevation in mind along with the symptomatology. In RBB, this may be the pattern. A gradual slope may be there. This convex pattern is, you will also find there may be a flat ST elevation. In the same way, Osborne of hypothermia type of wave may be there in very early ST elevations. This is LBB with the ST elevation in V1, V2, V3. this pattern will be there. We will talk about the Garbosa criteria. That's how we diagnose the ST elevation myocardial infarction in the presence of left bundle branch block. This is a concordant ST elevation, which even if this is more than 1 millimeter, it is very diagnostic of myocardial infarction. So these are the patterns of ST elevation one should never forget. You will encounter them and have the high degree of suspicion, a third eye to diagnose a myocardial infarction, because the therapy has to be immediate. Mechanical or chemical reperfusion is very important and as soon as possible. It saves myocardium, and time here is muscle. Earlier you do it, more myocardium is saved. In proximal LAD, if it is before the first septal perforator, what will happen? ST elevation in one AVL as well as V1 to V6 with a fascicular block. This is very proximal LAD. We will show you the patterns in our narration. If there is a mid LAD, one and AVL are spared. If there is a occlusion after the first septal, if distal LAD is involved and a large diagonal is involved, then the ST elevation in V1 to V4 will be there, and in V5 to V6 will be there. AVL is a lateral lead, as you know, with minus 30 degree orientation. That will also show a myocardial infarction. Inferior MI, if it is very proximal or proximal circumflex, ST elevation in second third AVF and along with right sided leads also, which will show you right ventricular infarct. It carries much meaning if you diagnose a right ventricular infarct in cases of inferior wall MI, because the management differs here. This is one which I want to show you for bundle branch block. So this is a proximal LAD occlusion before the origin of septal and diagonal. You can see LVV pattern is there. So very proximal LAD occlusion. Here inferior wall MI, you can see reciprocal changes in one and AVL, second, third, AVF, reciprocal changes in V1, V2. These changes may suggest a posterior MI also, and if the ST elevation in V2, standard lead 2 and 3 is less than the ST depression in V1, V2, V3, then it may be a circumflex artery which may be involved. In the same way, this is the mid RCA. Because no other valves are involved in these cases, there is no posterior or lateral wall MI, and this MI is a mid RCA occlusion. A diagnostic dilemma. In cases where there was already, although left bundle branch block itself shows a myocardial infarction, but it sometimes becomes very difficult to diagnose the myocardial infarction in the presence of left bundle branch block. There are many criteria which we have talked about them also. You can see if there is a ST depression in V1, V2, V3, this may show a myocardial infarction. In the same way, if there is a ST elevation which is disproportionate and in the leads where it should be elevated, if it is more than 5 mm, it is diagnostic of myocardial infarction in the presence of left bundle branch block. This has to be kept in mind. The first option of treatment, the best thing to do with myocardial infarction is a mechanical reperfusion. that is balloon angioplasty, stent implantation. This is what is known as primary angioplasty. You have performed a reperfusion primarily in a case of acute occlusion, and this should be done if cath lab facilities are there. So more cath lab facilities mean more of mechanical reperfusions in cases of primary angioplasty. In cases of myocardial infarction can be performed. So fibrinolysis I will always talk as a second line therapy. That of too, if it can be done timely. If it is done after 6 hours, then there is more of hemorrhagic possibility rather than the reperfusion, because the fibrinolytics have the action of fibrinolysis up to some time only, and soon the thrombus organizes, we don't have a reperfusion. That's why the reperfusion in fibrinolytic therapy is not 100%. A important aspect of discussion in fibrinolytic therapy are contraindications, where they should not be given. That is much more important. So absolute contraindications: cerebral bleeds anytime in the life. If there was a hemorrhagic stroke, don't give fibrinolytic. Ischemic stroke within 3 months or 6 months of ischemic stroke, don't give thrombolytic. If there is a known intracranial neoplasm or some AV malformation, don't give. It may bleed. Closed head injury or any bleeding diathesis, never give. Suspected aortic aneurysm, we have already talked, dissection and aneurysm, don't give. Aneurysms will rupture. Intracranial and intraspinal surgery within 2 months is an absolute contraindication for any thrombolytic therapy. Severe uncontrolled blood pressure of say 180 or something, don't give. Particularly if this is unresponsive to antihypertensive therapy. For streptokinase, never repeat the streptokinase if it was given within 6 months, prior 6 months of the index case. Relative contraindications are to be kept in mind before giving the streptokinase. Is a hypertension as presentation or a history of chronic severe hypertension, don't give thrombolytic. Ischemic stroke, I call it as 6 months. Dementia, don't give. Intracerebral, any pathologic conditions not covered in the absolute contraindications, don't give, my dear. If the patient is on oral anticoagulant therapy, don't give thrombolytic therapy. If there is a traumatic or prolonged CPR, don't give. It will cause a hemothorax. If there was a recent surgery or a recent internal bleeding which is incompressible, don't give. Pregnancy, yes, myocardial infarction may take place in this setting also. Don't give a thrombolytic therapy if there was a active peptic ulcer also. So these are the reasons not to give fibrinolytic therapy, and it's quite a big percentage of cases where thrombolytics are really contraindicated, and we have got a very good viable option, that is mechanical reperfusion. So how the thrombolytics and what are the kinds of thrombolytic medications which are available with us? TPA, this is altiplate, this is known as altiplase, and you have to give 100 milligram within say 100 minutes. 100 milligram in 100 minutes, including the boluses and the infusions. It is fibrin specific and was the first to diagnose, first to be invented. the clot-bound fibrin is dissolved. Relative selectivity for this thrombolytic agent. Tenecteplase, currently preferred agent. Many reasons. Because of the improved fibrin specificity of this agent, number 1, and number 2, resistant to plasminogen activator inhibitor, so the action lasts nicely, 30 to 40 milligram in one single bolus of 10 seconds, and the non-cerebral bleeding was less if it was given after the 4 hours. The TNK should be given if the cath lab is 3 hours journey or something. So TNK is tenecteplase is the currently preferred therapy as far as thrombolytic is concerned. Another one. This is another fibrin specific. This was also the first of the third generation. This is given in 10 milligram boluses at 30 minutes apart. This is also a faster time in administration. So it is ease of administration and retiplase should be considered. Streptokinase. Good old streptokinase. No more available in many countries, including United States. Because of many problems associated with streptokinase, possible development of antibodies, 1.5 million in 1 hour is the dose, standard dose, which we have been giving for say around 2 decades. Cerebral bleed is a little less than TPA but significant. May be preferred in elderly, but don't give streptokinase, I should say. It is non-fibrin specific and the lysing the clot elsewhere also. It results in systemic fibrinogenesis, and don't give this agent as far as possible, or the financial considerations allow you. There are medications which are also essential before the reperfusion therapy is taken up. Maybe mechanical or maybe a chemical. Aspirin 325 milligram. Chewable. Oxygen should only be given if the saturation falls before 94% or 90%. Nitroglycerin should be given if there is a heart failure or there is a persistent chest pain or if there is hypertension. But don't give in right ventricular myocardial infarctions. Recent use of say phosphodiesterase inhibitors like sildenafil, if you give nitroglycerin, it may cause precipitous fall in blood pressure and may lead to a total circulatory collapse also. Oral antiplatelet agents, which are thienopyridines, should be given whether the primary angioplasty is done or not done. So these are clopidogrel, prasugrel. They irreversibly inhibit the P2Y12 inhibitors, and there is a recent development of ticagrelor. Ticagrelor should be given if you are taking up as a case for mechanical reperfusion, 180 milligram, to be continued for 90 milligram 2 times a day, at least for 3 months, preferably for 1 year. In the same way, 60 milligram prasugrel. But there are contraindications, we will talk later on. If there was a stroke any time, if the patient's body weight is less, don't give prasugrel. Clopidogrel, most commonly used drug, some people say 300 milligram, but 600 milligram is the loading dose, and 75 milligram OD, which has to be continued. acute MI associated with cocaine use. Now these days, these type of cases we are getting cocaine use. The therapy is different and the reasons, pathophysiology is different. So what is the pathophysiology of cocaine use, a cocaine induced myocardial infarction? Spasm and thrombus formations. These are two regions which will lead to an occlusion of the artery and myocardial infarction. Adrenergic stimulation is the basic process by which this can occur. A spasm may be there in a normal coronary artery or a mild moderate atheromatous artery. Because of the adrenergic stimulation, increased O2 demand will lead to a myocardial infarction, and beta adrenergic alpha and beta both stimulation will cause increase in heart rate and contractility. They contribute to the onset of ischemia. Pain occurs within 3 hours, and the pain, myocardial infarction, depends upon the time of the route of administration also. 30 minutes after crack smoking, 90 minutes, 135 minutes after nasal, and 80% of the cigarette smokers they may have a cocaine abuse. What will you do in such cases? Beta blockers are contraindicated. Don't give beta blockers. If you block the beta cells, then there will be a uninterrupted alpha adrenergic stimulation which will cause harm to the myocardium. Antiplatelets and heparin are to be tried. In the same way, sublingual or intravenous NTG or calcium channel blockers are to be tried to relieve the spasm in such cases. For pain, you may really give a benzodiazepines. Beta blockers, as I told you, are contraindicated. Reperfusion therapy may be considered if the vasodilator therapy is unsuccessful. Vasodilators of nitroglycerin and calcium channel blockers. Immediate mechanical reperfusion may be required because of some cases of atheromatous disease associated with cocaine use, because the cocaine use itself may lead to atheromatous processes. Mechanical reperfusion plays an important role in acute myocardial infarction. That should be the procedure of choice to give more than 95% of success in reperfusing the territory. The coronary flow can be classified into TIMI 0, 1, 2, 3 flows. TIMI 0, no flow, no dye goes after the occlusion, and TIMI 3 flow means the normal perfusion. So the aim of mechanical reperfusion is TIMI 3 flow in the infarct related artery. There are many ways, there are many trials which suggest that these are the procedures which should be done to reperfuse the coronary artery, like thrombus aspirations, balloon, without any balloon, rotring effects, or direct stenting. But reperfusion may be required when the thrombolytic therapy has failed. Thrombolytic therapy failure can be known after 90 minutes of administration of a fibrinolytic agent. If there is no resolution of chest pain, or if the ST segment resolution is less than 70% of the highest ST elevation, then it's a unsuccessful or the thrombolytic failure. Accelerated idioventricular rhythm is also one rhythm which shows the reperfusion of the coronary artery. Pharmacoinvasive therapy is also one thing which should be discussed at this juncture. That if at say around 120 minutes or say within 150 minutes, if the angioplasty center is present, then it has been tried that we give half dose of fibrinolytic and half dose of GP2B inhibitor and send the patient to the PCI center. Perform the mechanical reperfusion. This has also been tried. I will show you some examples of myocardial infarction ECGs which you review and you will find them very useful. By first look only, you should know the ECG evidence of myocardial infarction. So just see, this is one ECG which shows a anterior wall myocardial infarction. You can see the changes in lead, standard lead 1, AVL and V2 to almost V4. This is classical anterior wall myocardial infarction. This is one case which is again of anterior wall myocardial infarction, but where the occlusion has taken place after the origin of diagonal. And you can see here that there are no changes in standard lead 1 and AVL. So the lateral area is spared from the occlusion. So V1, V2, V3 ST elevation. This is again classic of anterior wall myocardial infarction after the origin of diagonal. This ECG I have taken to show you the concave ST elevation in cases of pericarditis in almost all the leads, including 1, 2, standard lead, even 3, 4, AVR, AVL, AVF, V4, 5, 6. And what is there is, there are reciprocal changes in only one lead or maybe two leads, AVR. It will show you the ST depression. There is another finding with pericarditis is PR segment depression in almost all the leads, but reciprocal PR segment elevation in AVR. This AVR lead is very classical of reciprocal changes of pericarditis. Anterior wall MI again with reciprocal changes in second, third and AVF of ST depression, which we talked in the beginning. So reciprocal changes in second, third AVF and ST elevation in 1 AVL, V1, V2, V3 and V4 also. In the same way, this is one case of myocarditis where the ST elevation is indistinguishable from myocardial infarction. This is the case where the coronary arteries were found to be normal. Keep this picture in your mind. This is lateral wall MI, and at the time of ECG changes we were talking about the ST elevations in 1 and AVL. Here even in lead 1 it's only 1 millimeter, but AVL lead shows a lot of ST elevation. Later on in this patient we got the ST elevation in V5 and V6. Here you can see in a diagram attached that the circumflex artery was the culprit occlusive artery. Here again inferior wall MI. Posterior, because there is significant ST depression in V1, V2, V3. V1, V2, V3 ST depression is much more than the reciprocal changes that might have been. Along with this, there is a second degree AV block also. With a Mobis type 1 block, that is a Wenckebach type of block, increasing PR interval till a P is non-conductive. The first PR after the non-conducted beat is the shortest. This is also a case where there is a inferior posterior wall myocardial infarction and a second degree heart block with this kind of ST elevation. This should also be kept in mind with the posterior wall involvement. To see the posterior wall STT changes, there are two ways of knowing these ST changes. Posterior leads, that is V7, V8, V9, starting from posterior axillary line, infrascapular line and paraspinal line in fifth intercostal space. If there are ST elevation, then this is a posterior wall MI, but there may be mirror image changes in V1, V2, V3. These changes will be a R wave, a ST depression and a T wave. So the posterior wall MI and right ventricular MI in cases of inferior wall MI should be kept in mind, because the inferior wall MI related cardiogenic shock is a RV dysfunction, and the treatment here is not the nitroglycerin but a fluid infusion so that the right ventricular output may be maintained. This is again a patient where a good case indeed, in the way that left main coronary artery was involved. And I want to tell you that never forget that ST elevation in AVR lead. AVR leads axis is just the opposite of the usual axis of the myocardial potential, and if there is a ST elevation in AVR, it is a left main disease. No man's land axis and ST elevation is left main, and other leads will show the reciprocal changes in almost all the leads, including second, third AVR and V5, V6.